Welcome, everyone, to our Bible study. We are so excited that you're here with us. Make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, Bethlehem STL, here on YouTube. If you're watching us on Facebook, make sure that you're sharing it, liking it, sending it to a friend. If you're not already on your phone, I want you to grab your phone and I want you to send a text to one of your friends and have them join us. We want to see as many of you here as possible. My name is Katrina Wallace. I'm the Director of Worship Arts here at Bethlehem, and we're excited to get started.
Yeah, and I'm Seminarian Luke, and I'm so glad to be back here with all of you. And Katrina, welcome to the Bible study. It's good to have you. And we are reading out of Mark 9 today. So Mark 9, 38 to 50 is our text. You would have heard it in church on Sunday. And yeah, we're just going to get right into it. So it says, John said to him, "Teacher," he's talking to Jesus here, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he was not following us." But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one does a mighty work in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. For the one who is not against us is for us. For truly I say to you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you belong to Christ will by no means lose his reward. Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a great millstone were hung around his neck and were thrown into the sea. And if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It would be better for you to enter life crippled than with two hands and to go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame than with 2 feet and to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with 1 eye than with 2 eyes to be thrown into hell, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, how will it be made salty again? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another."
It's a lot to unpack.
There is a lot to unpack in this text today. And honestly, for a long time, I had no idea what this text was talking about, and I would get really confused and a little frustrated every time I read it. I don't know what it means to be, well, I do know what it means to be salty, but I don't think that's what it's talking about here. And I get scared of this idea of cutting off my hand or tearing out my eye. There are a lot of things in this text.
Yeah.
A lot of things to unpack. But I want to start actually at the beginning, and I have a short story from my own life to talk about with this. So the disciples come to Jesus, and they say, "Jesus, we got him. We got this guy. He did this horrible thing. He was casting out demons, but he doesn't follow us, and we want you to do something about it." And it's kind of like when we're kids. I don't know if you ever experienced this, but in my life, when I have 2 older brothers, and I would do anything I could to get those 2 in trouble.
I still do sometimes.
Yeah, it's easy to do that, right? We want to do what we can and get our parents or our adults on our side, right? And we want to find a way to make sure that other people are in trouble and we're not. And the disciples do something interesting here. They don't say, I don't know if you caught it, they don't say, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name and we tried to stop him because he wasn't following you."
Right.
Right. He says, because he wasn't following us. Yeah. So the disciples here, John, who's referred to in another book as the disciple who Jesus loved, so a very close disciple, is doing something here where he's trying to get someone in trouble and saying they don't follow us. He's putting himself in the same conversation.
Because we have to be right.
Because we have to be right.
There's no way that we could be wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's what we hear here. And so when I was a kid, there was a time where I had a friend who came down the street, and my parents were gone. And he said, "Hey, I ran into your parents. They're on a walk, and they said it's okay for you to come to the park with us." And so I thought, well, if he said that, then I'm sure it's fine, even though my parents had told me always check with them first. And I went to my brother and I said, "Okay, but you need to come with me. You need to come with me because I don't want to do this alone, so please just come with me." And then I went to my other brother and I said, "You need to come too." And my brother Mike and I, we went to the park, and I don't think he's going to love that I'm sharing this story, but we went to the park and we were there for a little while, and then all of a sudden I saw my dad's car rolling up, and I knew we were in trouble. We had done something that we shouldn't have. We hadn't checked with them first, and now they were coming to us. And when we got in the car, my dad didn't even yell at us. He just said, don't speak. Don't say a word. And so the whole 5-minute drive home was dead silent. When we got home, the first thing I decided to say was about my brother Ethan, who had stayed home. I said, well, Ethan just said he had homework. Otherwise, he would have come with us. So really, he should be in as much trouble as we are because he was going to come, but he just didn't. I was trying to get somebody else to take the blame, and I was trying to show that I was better.
Right.
Right. So that's what the disciples are doing here with this person casting out demons. But do you notice what they do? Did you catch what they did here?
What do they do?
So they flipped it around. Jesus flipped it around, and he said that what that person was doing was so good that a mighty work in Jesus' name, he said, it would not be able to be followed by evil. So Jesus, knowing that the disciples were waiting to be caught, right, or waiting for this guy to get caught, he flipped it around and he said, actually, he did something good in my name, and that means that he can't be affected. He won't do something evil afterwards. So that's kind of how this opens up.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So we have the disciples in this weird battle, and they feel very proud to be a follower of Jesus, and they want other people to get hurt, and they're really proud of themselves, and they need to make sure. Do we do the same thing maybe as Christians?
I think we do sometimes.
Right.
It's tricky. Because we get in these patterns of, I think that I'm doing the right thing, and we always tell ourselves to do the right thing, that sometimes it's difficult to catch ourselves when we do the wrong thing.
Yeah. And it's easy, especially as, so for both of us growing up in the church, it's really easy to kind of feel like we're in this club, and we can say, well, they're on the outside, but for us, right, we
know more.
We know more. We're better than them. We're in church more often. We know all the songs. We can sing the songs. We help out, we volunteer, we work here, we do all these things. It's really easy to feel like we're on the inside, just like John did. And these other people, they should be punished, but we shouldn't.
Right.
Right. So this is then where we get into kind of an interesting part of Jesus's dialogue, where he really starts to say some really law-heavy things. And what I mean by that is he says some things that don't necessarily sound like a lot of the really loving things Jesus says. And so it's important here to not just look at this and get worried that Jesus is saying something wrong, but try to understand why he's saying these things. So Jesus keeps going here. So he's talking to the disciples, and he talks about, he says, whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a great millstone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the sea. So that's heavy.
That's really difficult, yeah.
Yeah. And what he's saying here is how important it is to be raising up the young people in our church, right? Or in the community. So he has some young people around him. He has these little ones around him. And as he's talking to them, he's saying to the disciples, these are the ones who need to hear the good news most of all. Right? If we can raise somebody in the church, they have a better chance of staying in the church and of raising up new people. And I see that a lot at Bethlehem, right?
Right. We have a lot of young people who are really involved in a lot of things, and we have to be really careful that we are making sure that we are taking really good care of them.
Yeah. And this is a story that's gone on for a long, long time in the history of Bethlehem. It's not just something unique to our time. So I've been here a year, and you've been here almost a year.
Almost a year,
yeah. 9 months or so. And we both were kind of adopted into this family that was already serving young people so much. But this has been going on forever at Bethlehem, as a lot of you know. And so hearing about this and seeing how important Jesus places the faith of a young one, it's really cool to see this. And also it should be a little convicting for the times. I know for me, I get frustrated if kids are making a lot of noise in church. I sometimes, if somebody's crying, if there's a baby crying and I'm trying to listen to the sermon.
They're running around in the back.
Yeah, exactly. There's all these things going on, and so it's a little frustrating sometimes. But this is a really great reminder that we're supposed to care for them and be excited that they're here. Right? The young people, they're not always going to do the things that we want them to do, but it's about building that habit of having them in church.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. We talked about how sometimes, especially when we grow up in the church, it's difficult to make sure that we're not judging others who are outside of the church, but we have to be really careful about judging other people inside the church too. Because we don't all do church the same way. We don't all receive it the same way. So it's important to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And today, actually, is a really great example of that. This morning, we had an entirely youth-led service. And that's what it means to be a church that cares for the little ones, right? In this passage, we had little ones who were at the feet of Jesus. And now we're not physically at the feet of Jesus, but we do get to show Jesus to kids.
Right.
And when we have them in church and when we show them that it's okay that they lead, even if they mess little things up or even if it's not exactly how we would do a normal service,
right?
It's so important and so good to have them in church with us.
Especially if we want them to be able to go out into the world to point other people to Jesus. It's not just about coming and sitting at the feet of Jesus, but it's about leading others to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and another, just a last point on this, something good to remember is the older we get, we have to always remind ourselves that the young people, they're the church of tomorrow.
Right.
Right. And so we can do all the things, and I know we're both still young, I get it, but we can do all these things in our ministry, but we know that there will be a day where we won't be here, but the 5-year-old who is helping lead church today, right, they'll be the ones bringing more people to Jesus, telling more people about the good news of Christ.
Right.
And so that's really, really great here. And so when we go on from here, Jesus gets really serious and he starts to say some kind of crazy things. So verse 43, he says, "And if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life crippled than with 2 hands and go to hell." And then he explains hell. He says the unquenchable fire. Then he goes back and he says, "Now if your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life lame than with 2 feet and to be thrown into hell." And then he finishes by saying, "If your eye causes you to sin, tear it out. It's better for you to enter the kingdom of God with 1 eye than with 2 eyes and to be thrown into hell." That's crazy. Crazy, right?
Just cut it off.
Just cut it off.
Get rid of it.
Yeah, these are physical parts of our body, things that we've lived our whole lives with. And Jesus is looking at his disciples, who should be pretty smart guys by now. They've been following Jesus for a while. And he says, just cut it off. Just your hand, cut it off. Your foot, your eye, whatever it is, get rid of it. And it almost, and I'm going to be careful saying this, it almost sounds like something Jesus wouldn't say.
Yeah.
Right? Especially the Jesus we talk about a lot isn't the Jesus who's saying, cut things off, and if you do something, you're going to be severely punished for it. But we got to understand why he's saying these things.
Right.
So one, he's probably a little frustrated with the disciples because they came to try to get somebody in trouble. But the other thing is he's making a greater point. And so he says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. But maybe we could think about it like, what's that thing in your life that's constantly leading you into sin?
What's that person?
What's that person? Yeah. Yeah. Is there somebody in your life who you know you shouldn't be hanging out with, but you keep hanging out with them, and then every time you're around them, something happens that shouldn't happen, or you start talking poorly about people, or you start acting a certain way, or you start doing something you shouldn't do. Yeah, what's that person? Or maybe what's that place? Is there a place in your life that you know you shouldn't be going to? You know you shouldn't be at, but you keep going back. Right? I can think of examples for both of those things in my life. And so when we read these words, Jesus is saying to us, if there are those things in your life, cut them out. Get them away from you, right? Because it's better for you to lose something and mourn losing it. You're going to miss that friend. You're going to miss that friend. But it's better for that to happen than for you to live a life outside of God's command.
Right. And I think it's also interesting that he makes it a part of you that you have to cut off. And that's going to be painful. It's going to be really difficult to lose that thing. And it might cause a lot of discomfort, and it might take time to regrow a new part that will work in the same way for you. Yeah. But you have to get rid of the part that's hurting you.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's something to think about for you today. I know as I was preparing for this Bible study, that was a really convicting thing for me. Because we all have it. We all have that sin. We all have that that pain, whatever it is, that recurring thing in our lives, whether that's addiction or a person or a place or whatever it is, right? We all have something that's constantly bringing us to this place where we fall and we fail and we hurt our relationship with God. But this is where it wraps up, and this is what's so good about the God we serve is he doesn't leave it there, right? He doesn't say you need to do this thing and that's how you're going to get to heaven, because that's really dangerous. I can tell you for sure that if I had to do something to get into heaven, if I had to be good enough to make it into heaven, I would never get there.
No.
Not a single part of me, not the hand I cut off, nothing, right?
Nope.
There's no part of me that has done enough or made God happy enough to deserve heaven.
Right.
But Jesus, the man who's literally talking to them, which would have been, man, that would have been amazing, right? To actually hear his voice. Jesus says to them, he says, for everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its saltiness, how will you make it salty again? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another. So salt is something we all know what salt is. Right?
Yeah.
We've all had salt on food or whatever, and we know we can all identify what salt tastes like. And so Jesus is saying that we all have this thing, right? We have this grace that's been given to us, and this good news, right? Through his life and death, and his resurrection, we have this thing that's been given to us, and we know that through that we have new life and we have hope. And as Christians, we get to carry around this saltiness, this thing that has so much flavor and so much joy. And we get to bring it to other people and say, I've got this God that I serve who breaks down walls, right? He's the same God who parted the Red Sea. He's the same God who slayed Goliath. He's the same God who helped Noah. He's the same God who did all of these things. And now today, right, today, he's the God that loves us here at 2153 Salisbury Street. He's the God who is with you in your darkest moments. He's the God who loves you and cares for you. He's never going to leave you. That's the God we serve.
Right.
And so when we have this saltiness, that means that we get to go out and we get to share it with people. We get to talk to the people that no one else is talking to, and we get to say, I've got this God, and you should know more about it. It's amazing.
Right. And I think it's also interesting that when you put salt on a food, it makes the food flavor come out more. So it's almost like when we are going out into creation and when we're talking to these people about Christ, it's just going to let them know him more and more.
Yeah.
It's not just about giving them the Bible and saying, go ahead and do what you want with it. It's about, here's the Bible, but let me teach you how to actually read it. Let me teach you how to actually walk this Christian life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Jesus leaves them with that, but he doesn't end there. The last thing he says, and we'll finish up here, he says, and be at peace with one another. So it's a really good thing that the last time people were arguing with each other was 2,000 years ago. This was written, right?
Yeah. Nobody argues.
Nobody
anymore.
argues. Nobody has disagreements. Churches
Never.
are perfect. Everything goes right all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Or maybe we all have things that we argue about. Maybe we all have days where we get into arguments or moments of days, right? There's not a single day that goes by where I don't get frustrated by something. Right. And so Jesus says, have this saltiness and find peace with one another. And that's not peace that we can have on our own. That's not something we can do, but it's something that God has given us. And so when we live with other people, we get to share that peace with them. And we get to say, even when I'm mad at you, even when I'm frustrated with something you said or did, we still have this peace of Christ that, it's with us all the time. And it's greater than anything there's ever been. So we're going to wrap up here. But the last thing I want to leave you with is I want you to actually drop something in the comments. I want you to just say the word peace. Just drop the word peace in the comments. And I want that to be a reminder to you today that when you go out this week, find peace with those people that you're struggling with. Find peace with those people that you're getting upset with. And before you try to go and run and tell on somebody for not being as good of a Christian as you or whatever, look for peace. Look for what God has given you. right? And I'm not just saying that to you. I need to do it too. I'm sure, Katrina, you do
Absolutely,
as well.
I do.
Yeah, these are things that we all struggle with. And so today, as you go out, leave the word peace in the comments and work on that with one another. And know that regardless of how that goes this week, Jesus loves you and he has forgiven you for anything and everything that you've done against him.
We thank you so much for joining us for this Bible study. Again, make sure that you're subscribed and you hit the notification button for our YouTube channel. Make sure that you're following us on Facebook. Make sure that you send to a friend, and have an amazing day.
Yeah, and if you've ever enjoyed the Bible study, if you enjoy the Bible study, the last thing we want you to do is come back to church on Sunday and throughout the whole week, check out Bible studies. We've got plenty of them that you can be a part of in person. But we're always going to be here at 6 p.m. So every Sunday night, come back, and we'd love to see you here. Have a great night.